10 spine-chilling true horror stories from cursed cruise ship Sinister. Secrets exposed. The SS Valor cut through the cerulean waves with a grace that belied the tales whispered in hushed tones around town. Anyone with a pulse knew the story's disappearances, strange occurrences, shadows that seemed to follow you around corners. Yet, the Johnson family was blissfully unaware of the dark history that loomed like storm clouds on the horizon as they boarded the ship. Mark and Sarah, hand in hand, beaming with excitement, and their children, Emily and Jake, bounced with the kind of innocent enthusiasm only a vacation can inspire. The promise of adventure hung palpably in the air, but so did an underlying tension that neither parent could shake. As the ship pulled away from the dock, the sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows on the water. It glimmered too beautiful, too inviting, drawing them further from reality. "It's just the excitement," Mark reassured Sarah, brushing off her fleeting glance towards an old crew member who seemed to eye them too intently. They laughed, children squealing with glee, but the laughter felt oddly hollow, swallowed by the creeping silence that followed the captain's warning of the approaching storm. By nightfall, the atmosphere transformed drastically. The laughter of fellow vacationers fell away, replaced by unsettling murmurs. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision as Emily swore she heard whispers drifting from the ship's bowels. "It's nothing," Mark said, a chill racing up his spine, but even he found no comfort in those words. Their rooms felt too confined, a small prison enclosing their anxious hearts. Sarah's laughter faltered as she recalled a tale she was told just before they left, an old sailor's warning about the ship that craved the sea's secrets. "You must respect her, else she'll take those who trespass," he had said, his eyes blazing with conviction. She shook it off. After all, it was just a story. Yet each creak of the ship echoed like a warning in her ears. Suddenly, the storm broke. The SS Valor shook like a leaf caught in a gale. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, precautionary yet undeniably tense, announcing lockdown procedures. Panic swept through the ship, turning joy into dread. The Johnsons clung tightly to one another in their cabin as fear surged, voices outside rising to frantic shrieks. "Mom, I don't like this," Jake whispered, his small hand trembling in Sarah's. Mark shot a glance at the other passengers, their expressions twisted with fear. Shadows loomed larger, and the flickering light did little to cover the paranoia creeping into their minds. This ship, this beautiful monster, was no longer their escape, it was a trap. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The storm howled like a beast and raged, entrapment blossoming among the passengers. The walls throbbed with an energy too dark to comprehend. Mark squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, feeling the tension coil in the air, thick and suffocating. They could hear strange noises, strangled pleas mingled with ghostly laughter from further down the hall. As they huddled together, fear clawed at their sanity, turning the family circle into a desperate bond in a nightmare. Determined to seek answers, they ventured out into the chaos, the ship swaying ominously. A figure appeared down a corridor, the captain's icy gaze penetrating the shadows like a lighthouse warning them away. Doomed sailors, ghosts of the deep, legends becoming reality. They turned to flee, a chilling scream piercing the air like glass breaking, signaling the onset of their darkest reality. As the hunt began, they realized their greatest fear would not come from the storm outside but from the secrets entwining the ship and those around them. Would they survive the night, or had they already become part of its haunted tale? The noise outside the cabin escalated, a cacophony of shouts and frenzied footsteps pounding against metal floors. Mark held tightly to Sarah and Jake, while Emily's wide eyes darted around, searching for something, anything to cling to. "What is happening?" Sarah whispered, but the question seemed pointless as the ship shuddered violently, throwing them against the wall. "We need to find out what is going on." Mark yelled over the din, his voice barely piercing through the chaos. They stumbled into the corridor, each step echoing with the uncertainty of impending doom. Strange shadows flitted just beyond the flickering emergency lights, flicking away before they could fully take shape. Whispers tangled with the wind, chilling their blood, hints of terrified cries infiltrating their minds, scrambling over one another desperately, creeping under their skin. "Mom! Dad!" Jake stuttered, gripping Sarah's hand tighter, nails digging into her flesh. They moved as one a frightened family trapped in a labyrinth of shadows. Then, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Panic surged through Mark, and he activated his phone's flashlight, its glow revealing members of the crew, eyes wide with terror, rushing past them without a word. Mark tried to call out, "Hey! What's happening?" But they were lost in a stampede, yanking at clothing, some crying for someone named Anna, while others shouted to find the captain. "Where do we go?" Sarah's voice quivered, a fragile thread breaking amidst the terror. Mark pointed down the long corridor where a faint glimmer beckoned like a siren's song, promising safety just beyond. But as they approached, a figure emerged from the shadows, shrouded in a tattered uniform. "Go back. Get away from here." The man rasped, his breath heavy with urgency and a strangeness that set their nerves alight. The crewman's sunken eyes seemed haunted, and even just a whisper of his voice seemed to shatter whatever hope they had left. "What's happening? You have to tell us," Mark demanded, but as the crewman turned, his form flickered like an old reel of film, a distortion that left them frozen in place. The darkness felt alive, swirling around them with weight, and with it came the unmistakable stench of decay that clawed at Mark's stomach. The lights flickered back for a brief moment, illuminating a scene that seared into their minds, people huddling together, fingers twisted in desperation. They were staring at something down the hall. Something that didn't belong. A doorway that had previously been sealed, yawning open like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. "Don't look!" The crewman shouted, scrambling toward them, but it was too late. Emily's gaze was already glued to whatever lay beyond. Her breath hitched as she stumbled back in terror. The door wasn't empty, it seemed a swirling darkness flowed through it, a dense fog filled with screams, echoes of despair that cracked the air like thunder. They backed away, but something inside called them forward. Their instincts screamed at them to turn back, yet curiosity pulled them, luring them into the abyss of that cursed passage. "Come on. We need to get out of here." Mark tugged at Jake and Sarah, but in that moment, attention shifted. The crewman collapsed to the floor with a tortured scream, hands clutching his head, as shadows darted around him, pulling him toward the open doorway. "Run!" Mark cried, fear propelling them down the hall. They fled as the screams intensified, and with every footfall, the ship seemed to shudder in sympathy, writhing beneath them as if alive. Yet the shadows were close behind, hungry, insistent, whispering forbidden secrets, promising unimaginable horrors that would change their lives forever. Would they manage to escape, or had they already sealed their fate? Ahead, the corridor forked into two paths. One seemed to hold a faint flicker of light, warmth that called to them. The other path was steeped in darkness, a void that promised no return. They hesitated, hearts racing. To safety or into the unknown? And what awaited them at the end of either choice? "Mark, which way?" Sarah stammered, eyes filled with uncertainty. That he took a deep breath, the weight of choice pressing down. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." And as they made their choice, the shadows slithered ever closer, hungry for their decision. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward the flickering light. The warmth it promised felt like a lure, tempting them away from the shadows that writhed at their backs. Hesitation clung to the air, but fear finally drove them. They sprinted toward the glimmer, footsteps echoing against the cold, metallic floor. They plunged forward, praying they wouldn't look back, even as the shrieks grew louder, twisted cries hanging in the air like a dark fog. "Please. Not like this," Jake shouted, his voice thin with terror. The boy's footsteps wavered, and Mark risked a glance back. Shadows coiled and snapped like hungry serpents, ready to drag them into darkness. He felt a surge of desperation. "Keep going. Don't stop," Mark shouted, pushing his family ahead. The flickering light grew brighter, revealing a door at the end of the corridor, a doorway framed in crimson. It glowed ominously, pulsing like a heartbeat. As they neared, they skidded to a stop. The door was ajar, revealing a room bathed in eerie red light, accented by shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Within the room, vague shapes writhed, they felt alive, vibrating with an energy not of this world. "What the hell is that?" Sarah breathed, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Mark replied, uncertainty gnawing at him. But he felt a strange pull, like an unseen force beckoning him closer. It was thrilling yet terrifying. Just then, Jake tugged at Mark's shirt, eyes wide with fear. "Dad! Can't we just go back? It can't be worse than whatever's in there." Mark glanced back at the corridor. The shadows were almost upon them, extending long dark fingers that seemed eager to claim their prey. They had no time to waste. "Listen, we have to make a choice now," Mark yelled, frustration spilling into his voice. "We face the unknown or get swallowed by whatever's chasing us. Let us just try the door," Emily said, her voice small but resolute. "We might find something to help us. We might find our end." Sarah whispered with pale lips, trembling. Mark opened the door wider, and it groaned under pressure, a sound that crawled into their bones. An unearthly chill swept over them as they stepped inside. The room was empty, aside from a circle of light at the center, a crude altar adorned with strange symbols that looked vaguely familiar, like fragments of a dream long forgotten. An old, tattered book lay open in the center, pages fluttering as if driven by a wind from nowhere. "What is this?" Jake whispered, inching closer. Mark felt a sudden jolt of recognition. He had seen that book, a rare horror collection from the library. It was said to hold dark secrets, ancient knowledge that could tip the scales between life and death. "We shouldn't touch it," he warned, a sense of dread rising within him, but before he could stop them, Sarah took a step forward, reaching for the book, her fingers brushing over its surface. The air changed, crackling like static, and the shadows outside rippled violently as if reacting to her action. Was that a mistake? Emily's voice trembled in the thickening atmosphere. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the shadows surged into the room like a dark wave, racing towards them with an angry howl, their desires palpable. "Run! Get out!" Mark shouted, yanking Jake back just in time to dodge the overwhelming darkness that exploded into the room, consuming everything in its path. They turned, but the exit was gone, swallowed by shadows. Panic surged through Mark as he pressed against Sarah and Jake, and Emily looked around in wild confusion. "Stay together," he commanded, gripping their hands tightly. But even as he said it, part of him felt they were already lost, trapped in a nightmare fueled by their choices. Then a voice slithered through the chaos, a faint whisper that sent chills down their spines. "You chose to know, now you must pay the price." They realized whatever secrets the book held would not be easy to forgive, and the price might be more than they could afford. In that moment, Mark's resolve hardened. "We will not let this darkness swallow us," he hissed, defiance ringing through his fear. But could they find a way back to the light, or were they doomed to remain ensnared in this horror forever? And just as the shadows reached for them, something in the darkness stirred, revealing a truth more horrifying than anything they could have imagined. What awaited them just beyond the veil of darkness? And would they dare uncover it? The shadows intensified, their forms twisting and writhing, as if given shape by the latent fears of Mark and his family. The air burned cold in their lungs. Each breath was a struggle against the panic clawing at their throats. The voice echoed again, chillingly close. "You chose to know, now you must pay the price." Mark tightened his grip on Sarah and Jake, his heart racing. The dark wave surged forward, a mass of seething despair. There was no path back, they had encroached upon something ancient and terrible. "What do we do?" Jake whimpered, eyes wide with terror. Mark glanced around the room, searching for any shred of hope. Shadows flickered at the edges, eager to engulf them. "We need to find a way out," he exclaimed, scanning the altar and the strange book. "What's in there?" Emily asked, pointing to the ancient tome that beckoned still, its pages trembling as if breathing. "No!" Mark shouted, the word bursting from his lips like a protective instinct. "We can't open it. The book, it's cursed." But uncertainty gnawed at him. The shadows licked at their heels, whispering promises and threats in the same breath. Something deep within him felt an undeniable draw towards the book. Maybe it held the answer. Maybe it was the very thing that could save them. "It's our only chance." Sarah's voice was desperate. "We can't just stand here." With a shuddering breath, Mark stepped forward, trembling fingers reaching for the tome. The moment his skin brushed against the cover, the room trembled. A slow, deep growl reverberated through the air. The book flared with a blinding light, drowning out the shadows momentarily. "Mark!" "No!" Sarah screamed, but it was too late. The words on the pages surged upward, coiling like smoke, surrounding him in a thick, suffocating fog. Within the mass of darkness and blinding light, ancient symbols flickered to life, each one echoing with a voice of its own. Memories, vivid and haunting, swirled around him, moments of happiness and despair, choices made and paths taken, fears laid bare. "Face it," a voice roared, electrifying the air. "You cannot escape." Mark felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing in, each marking him, judging him. His vision blurred, and the shadows whispered secrets that burrowed into his mind, trying to consume his very essence. "Mark!" Sarah cried again, her voice breaking through the chaos. He could almost see her, a shimmering light, fighting against the darkness encroaching on her. "Hold on!" Mark shouted, willpower roaring through him. "We don't have to succumb." The words poured from his mouth with renewed strength. "We survive together." But just as hope sparked anew, the darkness emitted one final, bone-chilling howl. It surged toward Mark, and the shadows enveloped him. The altar surged under the weight of their energy, ancient symbols blazing with rage as the light fought to burst free. The room began to tremble violently, shaking the very foundation beneath them. Mark was pulled back into the vortex of swirling memories, a desperate dance between light and dark. "Make your choice." The voice crescendoed, and Mark felt his body dissolve within the swallowing void, leaving him confronted with a choice he hadn't anticipated. That he was alone, suspended in anguish, each option a sin, threatening to pull him back into the abyss. As he floated there, a singular thought pierced through. Will we fight for each other, or will we fall one by one? In that moment of decision, the shadows clawed at the edges of his consciousness, demanding retribution. What history would he choose to rewrite? The light flickered beneath them, dwindling with each passing second. With a scream trapped in his throat, Mark realized the fight was just beginning. But would they fight the shadows, or could they reconcile the darkness within themselves before it was too late? Mark's heart raced, the echo of the looming choice slicing through the turmoil surrounding him. He was suspended in a sea of darkness, memories swirling like a tempest. With each flash, visions of his family flickered in and out, their laughter, their fears, their hopes. The fear wrapping around him tightened, squeezing the breath from his lungs. "Mark!" The voice of Sarah clawed through the shadows, urgent and desperate. Somewhere beyond the veil of darkness, he could feel her fighting, could sense the light of her presence. "You have to choose." But what was the choice? To confront the shadows or accept the darkness within? Every half-formed thought was drowned by the roar of spectral hysteria, taunting him. He was spiraling deeper into a chasm, the weight of despair wrapping around him like a shroud. "Choose." The voice bellowed again, sharper this time, as if it could see through him. Haunted by the weight of his culpability, Mark felt himself teetering at the brink of insanity. The darkness shifted, pulling him closer to the gift of the ancient tome. It promised answers, salvation, or perhaps, a final betrayal. Just as he reached for clarity, the darkness began to recede, a chilling retreat that left a raw silence in its wake. Was this the end? Or merely an ominous pause before a worse horror? Mark could see the altar now, the book at its center. He stumbled forward, feeling a strange magnetic pull intensifying with each step. What would it reveal? Would it answer the questions that no one else dared to ask? Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the book, and with it came a cacophony of whispers, each more sinister than the last. They clamored for his attention, their voices weaving a tapestry of darkness that relaxed his trembling limbs for just a moment. "Welcome," they hissed, dripping with amusement, "to the truth of yourselves." As Mark hurtled down the rabbit hole of his mind, memories began to surface like rotten wood from the depths of a murky lake, times when he had failed, moments he chose fear over courage. Like ghosts, his past traumas clawed at him, each one seeking to drag him beneath. "No!" he cried, grasping at the air around him. It was suffocating, pressing down on him like a vice. "I want to let you take me. Join us, Mark," the voices beckoned, seductive. "Let the darkness in. Embrace what you truly are." But the shimmering image of Sarah and Jake surged before him, piercing through the fog. Their faces twisted with fear and disappointment. He would not let them down. In that electrifying moment, clarity surged. With a forceful will, he shouted into the void, "No. I choose love. I choose them." The shadows roared in defiance as the warmth of his choice ignited into a blaze. The tight grip of despair loosened, setting him free from its clutch if only for a moment. He stumbled back, gasping for breath, the darkness retreating, but before he could sigh in relief, the altar quaked, and the book split open violently, pages fluttering furiously in a wind that wasn't there. Moments of realization and dread spun in dizzying circles, folding in on themselves. "Mark!" Sarah's voice rang out again, frantic. "We need you. We can't." The rest of her plea was consumed as shadows snapped around him fiercely, pulling him back toward the altar. Thundering roars echoed in his skull, the ground shook as shadows swallowed the room, twisting it into a chaos strikingly familiar. "No!" he bellowed, hands reaching out as the grasp of despair closed in, threatening to devour him again, but in the heart of the storm, an image flickered, one so buried in the recesses of his mind that it felt like a rebirth. "Mark, find the key." What key? Drifting back and forth between light and shadow, he realized he had a choice once more. Would he succumb to darkness or unearth his power to resist it? A chill swept through him, and dread flooded his senses. What would happen if he failed? What if the shadows were right? Mark. The world around him spun, and a destiny hung by a fragile thread as shadows reforged the path ahead. But this time, the battle was far from over. Did he have the courage to face what lurked within, or would the shadows claim victory once more? The ground trembled, a warning that reverberated through his bones. Mark felt the surge of power rise within him, but it wavered like a candle flickering in a storm. With every heartbeat, the shadows morphed, twisting their limbs and reaching out as if they could taste his fear. He staggered back, desperately scanning his surroundings. The altar, the book, they felt almost alive, pulsating with a heartbeat of their own, thrumming in rhythm with his panicked pulse. Find the key. Sarah's voice echoed again, the urgency slicing through the chaos like a knife. What key? The thought felt foreign, lost somewhere among the shadows. Panic clawed at him. He could hear them whispering, mocking, joyfully anticipating his downfall. You will never escape, they crooned, weaving through the folds of his mind. Mark closed his eyes, focusing. If there was a key, it had to be buried beneath the rubble of his memories, somewhere he had hidden it in fear. With a deep breath, he willed himself to delve into the very depths of his soul. The chill slithered beneath his skin, urging him to abandon hope. But he resisted, channeling each memory of love, every image of Sarah and Jake, steeling his resolve. The shadows paused, sensing the shift, their grip loosening, if only slightly. No. He shouted, his voice louder than the chaotic whispers. I will not be your pawn. Suddenly, a vision emerged. A key gleaming with a soft light. Where had he seen it? He opened his eyes, heart pounding like a war drum, a wave of realization crashing over him. His childhood home, the cellar hadn't his father kept something there. Something important. The shadows stiffened, recoiling as if terrified of the light starting to break through the dark. Seizing the moment, Mark took a step toward the altar, feeling the reach of despair threatening to pull him back. "I remember," he cried, urgency fueling each word. "I remember where it is." With a surge of adrenaline, he dashed away from the altar, racing through the fog, the cacophony of whispers now morphing into enraged roars. Each step felt like running through molasses, shadows clawing at his heels, a dark chorus shrieking in fury. He stumbled into the familiar abyss of memory, the path winding and treacherous, but he pressed on. All around him, the walls began to shift, morphing into familiar shapes of his past. He darted past familiar figures, faces twisted in agony, remnants of regret that plagued him. A door loomed ahead, the cellar entrance. The old wooden frame creaked like a warning from beyond the grave. Mark pounded through the door, sending it crashing open. The air was thick with dust, the musty scent wrapping him in an embrace of nostalgia mixed with dread that he took a deep breath and stumbled down the stairs, each step echoing in his ears. At the bottom, darkness swirled. But there it was, sitting atop a rotting pile of old boxes, the key. Shining faintly, it beckoned him like a beacon. Mark lunged forward, grabbing it, the metal cool against his palm. "Now!" he shouted, visions of his family flooding back. "I know what to do." He raced back up the stairs, the shadows thrashing behind him, furious at his defiance. With the key clutched tightly, he reached the altar just as the tempest roared. "Use it!" the voices screamed. "You don't belong here." Mark slotted the key into the heart of the book, the moment he had been waiting for. It turned with a jolt, a surge of energy pulsing through him. But as the book opened, darkness erupted, spiraling around him like a vortex. In the eye of that storm, Mark felt something shift. Was this the release he craved, or merely the prelude to something darker? "Mark!" Sarah's voice came through again, desperate yet fierce. "We can't hold on much longer. You have to finish this." With resolve and fear intermingling in his chest, he prepared to face whatever lurked in the void, ready for the final confrontation. But something whispered behind him. "You thought you'd won?" And just like that, Mark's heart plummeted as recognition hit him. What did they mean? As shadows coalesced around him, he braced for impact, knowing that the finality of his decision to confront the darkness was still days away. What had he truly unleashed? Mark felt the weight of the book drag him down into the abyss. It opened like a rift, the pages swirling with ink that seemed to come to life, twisting into agonizing shapes. He barely had time to gasp before a blinding light erupted from within, illuminating the shadows. For a brief moment, the whispers quieted. Mark's heart raced. Had he summoned a power that would push back the darkness? He squinted, searching the luminous pages, desperate to find something, anything that could save them. Suddenly, from the radiant swirl, a figure emerged. A woman, her face hidden by a veil of light, stepped forward. "You seek the truth, but truth has a price," she said, her voice like a sing-song echo, the words dripping with foreboding. "Who are you?" Mark stammered, trying to steady himself against the storm raging around him. "I am the keeper of secrets," she replied, her voice both soothing and chilling. "You desire the key to escape, yet you must fathom the depths of your own soul first." Panic clawed at his throat. "But I've already faced so much. I can't lose Sarah and Jake." "I can't." "Then you must choose," she interrupted, her eyes piercing through the veil. "You may shield them now, but the shadows will only grow stronger. To save them, you must be willing to sacrifice the very essence of who you are." A deafening roar filled the space. The shadows writhed, their forms elongating, hungry for his surrender. Mark's vision blurred as the stench of decay invaded his senses. It was a manifestation of his own fears, his own failures. "Listen to them," the keeper coaxed, her voice slipping into a whisper. "They crave your darkness. Feed them, and they will let your loved ones go." His breath caught in his throat. "No, I can't. I don't want to hurt anyone. Not Sarah, not Jake." Yet the shadows vibrated with rage, curving in closer. Mark swallowed hard, feeling their breath on his neck. "What if I can't? What if I lose everything?" The light flickered like a dying flame. The keeper tilted her head, her gaze unyielding. "You will lose everything if you don't confront what lies within. Will you dare to face your demons?" The question hung in the air, sharp and suffocating. Mark felt it gnawing at his heart. Deep inside, he knew what he had hidden in the shadows: failures, regrets, the pain of loss. The darkness promised strength but required a sacrifice too great. "I want." Mark shouted defiantly. "I refuse to let you take control." The keeper regarded him with cold eyes. "Then you will all perish." In an instant, the shadows erupted, clawing at him. Mark braced for the onslaught, holding the key like a lifeline. Would it truly unlock a way out, or would it bind him further to the darkness? "Mark!" Sarah's voice rang out, a beacon in the enveloping nightmare. "Please." He closed his eyes against the storm. Memories flooded back: the laughter, the warmth of familial love. He recalled their faces, their eyes, pleading for him to fight. The shadows hissed, a tide of despair closing in like a vice. "Tell me what you desire." The keeper screeched, indignant. "Will you let them suffer for your foolishness?" "I want to let fear dictate my choices," Mark declared with newfound determination. In that moment, he plunged the key into the chaos, ready to unleash its potential. Light burst forth, filling the void with energy, fighting against the shadows that sought to enslave him. The dark forms screeched in pain, thrashing wildly as light clashed with darkness, but the keeper laughed a chilling, disembodied sound. "You think this light will save you? You are merely scratching the surface." As the shadows splintered, something deeper stirred behind them, an ancient malevolence that seemed beyond the veil of his memory. Mark felt his resolve weaken, questions racing through his mind. Had he made a grave mistake by confronting the darkness? Was the price worth paying? Mark gripped the key tightly. "I will find out the truth." But as he rallied his courage, a more horrifying thought took root in his heart. What if the truth led him to something far worse than he could ever imagine? In that moment of uncertainty, darkness surged again, reaching for his throat like icy fingers. What horror awaited him beyond the veil of deception? The light flared, an explosive force that pushed back the shadows momentarily. Mark could feel the heat on his skin, the warmth wrapping around him like an embrace. But in that fleeting moment of hope, he also sensed the weight of the shadows, relentless and gathering strength. They shrieked in anger, their whispers turning into a roar that vibrated in his bones. The keeper, her figure still wreathed in luminescence, seemed to savor his turmoil. "Your despair feeds them." He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay strong. "I want to give in. I want to let them take what's not theirs." But as he spoke, a creeping dread wormed its way into his mind. What if the shadows knew him better than he knew himself? Each dark tendril pressed close, reminding him of failure. Memories surfaced as crushed dreams, dreams that he buried deep under the weight of responsibility. Would they claw back to the surface just to spite him? "I see your turmoil," the keeper said, her voice now a soft caress that chilled him to the bone. "Your fear of failure, of hurting them, is your greatest weakness." The ground shook beneath him, as if the abyss itself shifted, reveling in his inner chaos. Mark could feel the shadows vibrating with delight at the thought of his surrender. "Can't you save them?" he pleaded, his voice trembling. "You claimed you could help." But she only smiled, that knowing smile that sent ice coursing through him. You already possess the key. You just need to unlock it. Let the shadows in and they will grant you unimaginable power. Power. The word echoed deafeningly. He had only wanted to protect Sarah and Jake, but could he harness this darkness to shield them? A flicker of desperation fueled his thoughts. What if the only way forward was to embrace the very thing he feared? No. He shouted against the cacophony. I want to let you twist my mind. I will save them. With renewed zeal, Mark plunged the key deeper into the light. The glowing energy surged through him, illuminating the fears hiding in the corners of his soul. But as the light grew, the shadows swirled faster, weaving a web of dread around him, each thread carrying echoes of doubt. Remember what you've left behind, they hissed, their voices like blades. Remember the screams you ignored, the love you shattered by running. It is not just them who are shackled, it is you. No. He screamed, drowning out their taunts. You're wrong. I am not my failures. I can change. The shadows recoiled, but the keeper stepped closer, her figure becoming more transparent. To confront your failures is to confront yourself. Will you face the truth, or flee to darkness? Mark felt the key pulsing against his skin. In that instant, he envisioned Jake's laughter, Sarah's gentle smile, their unconditional love. Could he truly sacrifice that? But the shadows whispered promises of strength he desperately craved. The keeper raised a hand, and the shadows surged forward, reaching for his soul with lustful abandon. Choose, Mark. Will you embrace the darkness and become more than what you are? Or will you let them suffer in your stead? In this moment, reality warped. The light flickered, casting twisted shapes against the walls of his mind. Mark felt himself slipping, the abyss yawning wide beneath him. And before he could fully grasp the choice before him, the key trembled in his hand, beckoning him to decide, was he ready to open the door to his worst fears? Just then, Sarah's voice broke through the chaos, more urgent now. Mark. Please. Don't listen to her. We're counting on you. The shadows screamed, a banshee wail that reverberated through the air. Time stretched painfully as he wrestled with the choice looming before him. The fate of his family rested in his hands, but as darkness clawed closer, he understood one truth that shimmered clear through the haze: whatever path he chose would irrevocably change them all. Was he willing to sacrifice himself for those he loved? With his heart pounding and hope hanging by a thread, Mark prepared to confront the horrors beyond the veil of deception. What lay waiting in the depths of his own choosing? A nightmare or something far worse? Time seemed to fracture, the moments suspended between hope and despair. Mark's heart raced as he faced the lurking shadows, their presence heavier than ever. The darkness pulsed around him, a living entity thirsting for his surrender. Mark. Sarah's voice screamed louder, pulling him back from the brink. You need to fight. We won't let you down. But as she spoke, the shadows twisted into grotesque forms, mocking him with the faces of his failures. Deformed apparitions of missed opportunities and lost relationships surged forward, their eyes hollow and full of the pain he tried to escape. Do you really think they care? They hissed, breath hot with venom. They only wish you'd disappear like the rest. Weakness runs through your veins. Embrace us, and you'll never be weak again. The keeper's silhouette flickered, her face a mix of pleasure and pity. See how they suffer. You could be their savior, or their doom. Memories flickered in his mind: the laughter at the park, the warmth of family dinners, moments where joy had danced freely before he had closed doors in fear. All lost now in the darkness that lurked within him. No. He cried, fighting back the tears threatening to spill. I won't forsake them. Not for this power. But how far would he go to protect them? What if the only way to truly save them was to give in, to let his darkness rise and shield them from their own? Choose wisely, the keeper taunted, her words dripped with malice. Will you embrace the shadows and find strength, or will you be crushed by your own burden? A whirlwind of guilt and anger surged within him. The key pulsed against his palm, a searing reminder of the choice he had to make. With every heartbeat, the anxiety clamored louder. "Mark, listen to me," Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the rattle of the shadows. "We believe in you. You can't let them win." An icy chill crept up Mark's spine as he struggled against the tide of darkness. It felt alive, a sinister whisper intertwining with his own desperate thoughts. "You're nothing without us, you're already lost." He couldn't bear their taunts, nor could he let his family suffer because of his indecision. He grasped the key tightly, his knuckles white. It felt both an anchor and a burden. Mark closed his eyes, taking a shuddering breath. "I refuse," he shouted, defiance surging through him like wildfire. He felt the surge of light intensify, pushing against the encroaching shadows as he fought for clarity, but when he opened his eyes again, the landscape around him shifted. The keeper was gone. Instead, he found himself in a dark hallway of monstrous proportions. Flickering lights cast an eerie glow, illuminated dust motes swirling in the stale air. Every step felt heavy, as if shadows were deliberately anchoring him down. Mark, a voice called softly from the darkness, a familiar sound that sent trepidation sprawling in his chest. "Sarah?" he whispered, heart pounding. The shadows pulsed, shifting around him, forming walls of darkness. He turned, desperate to find her, to protect her. The air grew thicker with each second, the horror of the unknown loomed larger. And then, without warning, a pair of glowing eyes opened in the blackness, piercing through his soul like daggers. Mark's breath seized in fear, and with it came the realization that this was just a mind game, this was a maddening reality. "Welcome home," the shadows breathed, echoing his unspoken fears. With renewed determination, Mark took a step forward, knowing he had to confront whatever wickedness lay ahead. But just before the shadows could entrap him once more, he felt a surge of power from the key. Would this darkness only lead to his undoing, or could he wield it to fight back? A single haunting thought filled his mind, the question lingering in the air: what if the thing he feared most was also the only way to save those he loved? And as the shadows closed in, he prepared for a truth far more chilling than any nightmare. Mark felt the weight of the key in his palm, a tangible reminder of the choice he must confront. The shadows lunged, hungry and thick like a tar pit, eager to envelop him in despair. But he could hear Sarah's voice, echoing through the darkness, wrapping around him like a lifeline. "You have to fight, Mark. We believe in you." With every scream of the shadows, Mark took a breath, grounding himself with memories of laughter, warmth, and love. Fear clawed at him, but he pushed back, feeling an ember spark within him, a light fighting against the stifling gloom. "I want to let you win," he shouted, shaking with determination. The shadows paused, hesitating as though stunned. Mark mustered his strength and surged forward, the key directed ahead of him like a sword. "You may have haunted my past," he declared, "but you will not control my future." The light from the key pulsed fiercely, forcing the darkness to recoil slightly, revealing glimpses of Sarah and Jake standing together, silhouettes of hope behind the veil. "We're here, Mark," Jake cried, his small frame flickering like a candle fighting against the wind. Reaching for them through the murky air, Mark felt their warmth reaching back. "Hold on to me," he urged, and with that, he pushed deeper into the void, the power unraveling the shadows that sought to shred them apart. As he made contact with the darkness, memories surged alongside him, the failures of his past, the moments of fear that had brought him to this precipice. He embraced each memory, feeling them swirl around him. "I own these. They do not own me," he roared, channeling the pain into a raging fire. With every ounce of will, he thrust the key forward, releasing all that he held dear. The shadows buckled and twisted violently, howls erupting from the swarm. Light poured from the key, filling the dark halls with brilliance that shattered the fabric of the darkness, layer by layer. Mark felt the weight of the Keeper's presence fading, the price of knowledge was diminishing. "The darkness is not my enemy. My fear is," he cried, channeling hope directly into the heart of the nightmarish void. Suddenly, the effects multiplied, exploding outward in a wave of shimmering light. Shadows coiled and writhed, screeching and snapping at their chance to reclaim him. But he stood firm, letting the brightness wash over him, illuminating everything in its path. Sarah and Jake's figures grew stronger, their hands grasping Mark's, holding him tight through the tumult. Together. Jake shouted, and they formed a circle, a fortress against the encroaching dread. We can't let go. The key blazed like the sun, its intensity becoming unbearable as it forged a portal through the shadows, a tear in the fabric of reality that promised salvation. With one last push, Mark thrust the key into the light, and the shadows screamed one final time, a lament of agony and loss, and just like that silence, the darkness shattered. Shadows evaporated as light flooded the corridor, and the familiar sound of the ship's engine hummed gently in the background. They were left breathless, standing in a radiant space that felt safe, but it didn't last. Bodies began to emerge from the shadows, lost souls encased in their misdeeds. They flickered like candle flames, mere echoes of what they once were, lost wanderers trapped in a cycle of despair. Mark's heart sank, realizing that while they had escaped, the shadows still roamed. Fight for them, too, Sarah urged, her voice stronger than before as she stepped forward. Mark nodded, understanding resonating between them. They wouldn't let fear rule. Not them. Together, they looked to the shimmering horizon beyond the morass of shadows, and with a shared glance of determination, they stepped forward. Mark gripped the key tightly, not just as an object of power, but as a symbol of hope, a resolve to illuminate every darkness with the fire of courage. With that, they plunged into the light, leaving the specter of their past behind. With every heartbeat echoing in unison, they chose love, freedom, and the promise of rebirth on the other side of fear. As they broke through, Mark glanced back at the remnants, the shadows fading, reluctant to let go. But it was no longer their tale. The SS Valor would carry a new story, a story of resilience and love. Mark turned to his family, their eyes bright with unshakable resolve. We'll remember them, he whispered, knowing that they would never forget what they had faced together. They had won their battle, but the fight for light would continue. As they embraced beneath the sun and sky, hope surged through them like a tidal wave, washing away the pain of the past and paving the way for a brighter tomorrow. Now, as the voyage ended, Mark felt unequivocally free, but this was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. It makes a huge difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support truly matters.